Good evening. Welcome to this candidates forum for the Hastings-on-Hudson School Board. My name is Susan Maggiato, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of the Rivertowns. We are very pleased tonight to be partnering with both the PTSA and with Disability Rights New York to provide, Disability Rights New York will provide American Sign Language interpretation and also live closed captioning. If you want to see the closed captions, you can click the three dots on the bottom of your screen labeled More, choose Captions, and then Show Captions. I welcome the four candidates for the two open seats on the board: Jeremy Galland, MacMahon, Theresa McCaffrey, and Jodie Meyer. A reminder that Election Day is next Tuesday, May 16th, and voting for candidates and the budget is from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the high school gym. Our timekeeper tonight is Yura Moen, a member of the Rivertowns League and a resident of Croton-on-Hudson. Our moderator is John Hessel, and in keeping with league policy, John is not a voter in this district. He is the vice president of the New Rochelle League of Women Voters. Just a word about the league. We are a nonpartisan organization in that we do not support or oppose candidates or political parties, but we do work to increase understanding of public policy issues, and we seek to influence public policy through education and advocacy. Membership in the league is open to anyone 16 years of age or older. A word about our recording policy that all the candidates have agreed to. Only the entities authorized by the league may record or live stream this forum. Only licensed media, which includes TV, radio, and newspapers, are entitled by FCC regulations to air portions of the recording. Anyone else who broadcasts or live stream must do so in its entirety. This is to ensure that the content of the forum will not be manipulated in any way to create false or misleading impressions of any candidate. The forum will be recorded and available for later viewing. There will be links on the Rivertowns League website and Facebook page, or just go to our YouTube channel, LWV Rivertowns. There will be no audience participation tonight. The questions the candidates will be answering were all submitted by members of the Hastings community, either at the time of registration or through email to the league. A committee of League and PTSA members met yesterday to review the questions. Our role was to organize them according to topic, and in some cases combine questions on a similar subject in order to include as many questions as possible. I would like to thank the PTSA for their help in this and in publicizing this forum to their members. And with that, I will turn the meeting over to our moderator, Mr. Hessel.
Hi, everyone. So this forum features the candidates for the Hastings Board of Education. We chose lots for the order of the candidate statements and questions. We have 4 candidates running for 2 3-year terms. Each candidate will have 1 minute to make an opening statement, and then we'll follow that with the questions. As said, questions were gathered and prepared by the PTSA and the Hastings League of Women Voters and submitted to this forum. Each candidate will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond to each question. The timekeeper will hold up a warning sign when there are 30 seconds of time remaining and a stop sign when time is out. Each candidate is allowed 2 rebuttals during the event. Rebuttal time will be 30 seconds. There's no responses to rebuttals. If deemed appropriate by the moderator, a rebuttal may be granted during closing statements. Closing statements are 1 minute. Due to the number of candidates and the length of this forum, we may not be able to accommodate every question, but we'll do our best to accommodate as many as possible. Here are your 4 candidates in the order that they're going to speak: Theresa McCaffrey, Jodie Meyer, MacMahon, and Jeremy Galland. And Theresa, that goes to you then for the opening statement.
Greetings, Hastings residents. I'm Theresa McCaffrey, and I want to thank you all for considering me for a school board trustee position. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum and the PTSA for helping to organize this. And I thank my family and my mother who took my children out. So they're not going to be coming in this room tonight. But they might. I live in Hastings with my husband and 3 children who are in 2nd grade, 5th grade, and 6th grade. Professionally, I work here in Hastings. I started Little Leaf Nursery School here at the Anderson-Hudson Senior Community, where we also have an intergenerational program. Before my work at Little Leaf, I was an elementary school teacher in New York City. I have my license in special education, and I also taught ELA in 5th grade for 3 years. As a parent, a teacher, a school administrator, and a community member, I feel passionately about school board.
Thank you very much. Jodie Meyer, you have 1 minute now.
We can't hear you, Jodie.
Oh, yes. Don't forget to unmute your microphones when it's your turn to speak.
Okay, I'm going to zoom through my 4-minute open. Here about 32 years ago, and first of all, thanks to the league and to the PTSA, where we knew we wanted to raise our family in this community. My 2 sons, Jake and Savi, who are 36 and 32, went through the schools from K through 12. They now want to move back to Hastings to raise their children, and I think that speaks volumes. Was it perfect? Of course not. Was it good enough? Yes, good enough and then some. My kids went on to get their EDD, 1.5 on the way, and my husband is a teacher. Oh boy, I'm done here. Okay, so why do I want to run for the board? You'll hear about my experience. When I heard that Doug was leaving the board, I thought that my background could be especially valuable. Our board is very young. As I might tell you, it takes a long time to be a board member. I previously served on the board for 13 years. I believe that my experience, my institutional memory, my perspective placed me in an unusual position. I don't heavily invested in kids.
Okay, thank you so much. Ms. Kai MacMahon, go right ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much to the League for hosting the event and to my fellow candidates for putting themselves forward for this position. My name is Kai MacMahon. I'm a marketing and business development professional who has spent 20+ years leading projects for iconic brands like American Express, P&G, Unilever, and IBM. I've also worked extensively in the nonprofit sector, leading the online fundraising team at Autism Speaks and running the marketing and ticketing team at the 9/11 Memorial and Museum here in New York City. My wife, Joanna, and I live here in the village with our 2 boys, and we absolutely love it here. I'm running for BOE because I'm dismayed at what is happening in school boards around the country. And instead of complaining about it on the sidelines, I've decided to put myself forward in an effort to contribute. I believe passionately that all kids should be afforded dignity and treated with respect. Recent events at our schools have brought into sharp focus that has not been the case for all in our community, and that is something we all desperately need to work on. My view is that a strong partnership between the board, administration, and teachers is what will help move us forward. And if fortunate enough to be elected, I look forward to helping to do just that.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy Galland?
Yes. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. It's actually quite helpful to have a forum like this. Not everybody's going to know everyone in Hastings, even though we're a small town. I'm going to try to speak tonight. I'll answer any questions that come to us, but my main perspective is that the board is a consensus operation and it has 7 volunteer residents who are going to try to work together to support the superintendent. I believe my background is especially helpful in that type of organization. 10 years of working as a teacher, 20 years of volunteering in schools once a week before that, and 30+ years living in this town. It allows me to have a better understanding of the educational industry, and I'd like to continue working on the school board. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have our first question. If you ever need me to read the question again, just please ask and I'll happily repeat it. Jodie Meyer, this question is going to go, you're going to start the questions, okay? What do you see as the role of the school board in the Hastings district, and how do you envision your contribution to this role?
So that's a great question. and really one of the most important questions. I see the role of the school board as having their basic responsibilities of oversight for strategies and policies and resources for district goals, for submitting a budget, proposing a budget to be approved for hiring, superintendent, to approve curriculum and policies. And I see that those are the broad areas. I see my role as a board member, all of our roles, is one of the hardest things to grasp when you're on the board. Your role on the board is to listen, to ask questions, to not have a personal agenda, and to try to come up and craft a way to have policies for the district, budget for the district that can meet the needs of all of the students, teachers, administration, while keeping kind of mindful about. And so I think the other thing is that my role on the board, given my own experience having served on the board for 13 years, my learning curve would not be very steep. And I think it's very hard when you're a new board member to learn about the responsibilities and the limitations of the board. And I think my role will be to help facilitate our working together and to support our superintendent. But again, I don't intend to come in and take over as if I've been here before. My job is to come in and work collaboratively with all of the board members.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Kyle MacMahon, you have the same question.
Thank you. So the role of the board, as far as I'm concerned, is to advocate for the children, essentially. It is the grease, if you like, in the machine, if that analogy works. You know, it is the oversight body that helps everything run. I'd echo what Jodie said in terms of advocating for every child, every cohort. You know, everyone's personal priority is their number one priority. The role of the board is to look at all of those priorities for all of the children in the district, and work out how to balance all of the various priorities against the realities of the school budget, the operating budget, rising costs, and all of those pieces. But my view is that the board's primary reason for existing is to be the advocate, to advocate for the children, for all children in the district.
Okay, thank you very much. Jeremy Galland?
Thank you. So like Jodie, I've been on the board before. I'm currently on the board, and the role of the school board changes. It depends on what issues the administration has in front of it. It also changes based on what our community can and can't support. So the role of the school board is to represent the whole community. And our whole community includes a lot of us parents with kids in the public school. But as I've said before, it includes a lot of parents who don't have children in the school, and it includes a lot of residents who don't have children at all. So the role of a school board member is to know when to get involved and when not to get involved, whether it's a cliche like micromanaging. And that does differ a little bit from what the view you might see as a parent. Our main goal over the last 5 years, I'm going to say, is to support our lead administrator. And if our superintendent stays on, signs a 4-year contract like Dr. McCaffrey did, then the schools are better supported. So a lot of the role of a school board member is to find a balance between providing ideas and guidance to a superintendent so that he can lead the school's talent that's in the building. And what that really comes down to nowadays is that residents will outlast principals and superintendents. So the school board is the ones that have a long-term view, and they try to deliver that guidance in a respectful way that understands the administration is running our schools.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Theresa McCaffrey?
So I know that the job of the board covers two main areas, the basic foundational areas, which is to hire and collaborate with the superintendent and to oversee the overall direction of the school district. in regards to budgeting, curriculum, personnel matters. The board is also the link between the community and the administration. My role would be to collaborate with the superintendent and all the administration and the other board members. And first and foremost, to build relationship with the other board members and the superintendent. That's what I would see as my main role in the beginning. After that, it's about the policies, evaluating the policies, assessing them, and working together.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so this next question is going to start with you, Mr. MacMahon. Here's the question. What unique skills and experience will you bring to the school board?
So a great question. Thank you, John. So as I mentioned in my open, my background is a combination of private sector and nonprofit. I've worked for a number of big advertising agencies. So Ogilvy here in New York City, Miram on the West Coast. I've also run big teams at significant nonprofits. So I ran the ticketing and marketing team at the 9/11 Memorial. That's about a $70 million organization. I ran a $50 million online fundraising team. And throughout my career, whether it's been on the nonprofit side or the for-profit side, a consistent theme has been working with different groups within organizations that might have different priorities, that might be pulling in different directions, finding common ground within the larger organization and working to have those individual groups pull in the same direction. And so when I look at the board's need to balance priorities, when I look at the relationships on the board level, when I look at the complexities of those dynamics, I see a lot of what I have done on the nonprofit and the for-profit side as being very relevant. So I would summarize by saying I bring for-profit and nonprofit experience and a consistent pattern of bringing people together to achieve a common goal and of managing complex situations and complex teams to deliver for the greater good.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Galland.
Thank you, John. So the skills that I bring to the board, for 20 years, I worked in finance. I'm very comfortable with the budget and the long-term goals. But to be honest, I would not have run for the board if that was my actual background. About 20 years ago, I started working in schools. 10 years ago, I made the complete switch to become a teacher. So what I bring to a school board is an actual professional understanding of how complex our education industry is. I'm thrilled whenever other board members also have backgrounds in education. I believe we need a mix of backgrounds. It needs to have some lawyers, some management executive consultants, some people who are strong at developing goals, but a board that's not inclusive of people who understand education from the inside. So my experience is that I've worked with principals from the teacher's point of view. Now I've started to work with superintendents from the school board point of view, and allows me to understand not just contracts and work environment concerns, but allows me to provide support in a way where I'll pick up on nuances that I can share with other school board members. I believe without a teacher on a school board member, there's a learning curve that runs out every 3 years. So we keep having energetic board members, but I provide something pretty unique, I believe.
Okay, thank you very much. Excuse me, Theresa McCaffrey, go right ahead.
So I take action when I see that there is a need. And 8 years ago, I was dissatisfied with the preschools that I saw in our local communities, and I decided to start my own. I created a school from the ground up, and it has grown every year and evolved. I do things at my job every day that lend itself to being on the board. I create and amend budgets. I hire and retain staff. I dialogue with teachers. I teach. I'm with the kids every day. And the skill set, because I'm both a school administrator and a teacher, I bring a large perspective to the board. Prior to starting my own school and running it, I taught special education. I was in the classroom working my butt off every day to just reach a broad range of learning needs. And I did the same thing in Harlem, where I worked for 3 years teaching ELA, doing anything that I could to get my students to read. All of this together makes me a great candidate for being on the school board.
Okay, thank you very much. Jodie Meyer? Unmute, please.
Thanks, John.
No worries.
I am a clinical psychologist by training, and I've been working as a psychologist in private practice for over 35 years. And I think, for one thing, that my skills that I've learned as a psychologist come in incredibly handy in being on the board and working with people. But along the way, I have consulted to Head Start. I've worked with preschoolers, teachers, and parents. I've worked in Mamaroneck at the Community Counseling Center with adolescents. And most importantly, I think for me in my professional life is that I've worked for over 35 years at a BSMD program at the City College of New York, the Sophie Davis Biomedical Education Program, whose mission is, the school's been around since 1974, to increase the number of underrepresented minorities in medicine. And in that role as a dean, I've been an administrator, along with the things that Theresa said about budgets and hiring and teaching and working with people. I have responsibility for admissions, for counseling and wellness. And I'm proud to say that my medical school admits 55 to 65% people underrepresented in medicine, which is greater than any medical school. That said, I say that because I think that also gives me enormous experience in the realm of diversity and multicultural issues that we are all facing right now. I think my years on the board.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we go to the third question, and we're going to start with you, Jeremy Galland. What are the top 2 pressing educational issues in the district?
Thank you. I like speaking first. You don't get a chance to think about your answer at all. But the top 2 pressing issues, if right now it's got to be FMS. If you want to talk short term, we have a learning environment challenging situation in our middle school. We have way too many students who are reporting and experiencing an unsafe, unfriendly, harassing, unacceptable environment. Luckily or fortunately, it's mostly in the hallways. It's not in our classrooms. Our teachers are managing and excelling in the classrooms. But one thing that's obviously right now in the forefront of our board meetings and our parental emails is incidents that are going on mostly in FMS in our middle school. A second major concern for our school district is visible as you see how our special education budget is growing. It's growing because it's an area that we needed to invest more time in, more energy in, and more finance in. So we have too many families that are determining that their child needs to get outside education, and then they're coming back to our schools and trying to advocate that they needed support because our schools failed their children. So a lot of our administrative work is focused right now on that. And our school board trustees are aware and involved in what the administrators' ideas and goals are.
Thank you. Theresa McCaffrey?
I would echo with what Jeremy just said about the school culture at the Farragut Middle School. I have 2 middle schoolers myself, and when I asked them to corroborate what was shared in, recent Facebook posts and emails from the district. They said, oh yes, Mom, there's a ton of inappropriate stuff happening. So we do need to work on building a school culture where everyone has a sense of ownership and innate desire to be empathetic, countering ableism and making sure our students of color are safe and validated and seen and feel like they belong. And it's the same with our LGBTQIA plus students. It's a school culture, and it's not just at FMS. It's just that we have recent incidences from that school that have been highlighted. We need to continue to find ways to reach the students. And my second, what I think crisis point is, for lack of better words, is our crisis of standardization, the crisis of the worksheet.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Kai MacMahon. Oh, no, sorry. Jodie Meyer.
Good place to stop, Theresa. We'll probably all say the same thing for this question. And John, could you just repeat the question for me?
Sure. What are the top 2 pressing educational issues in the district?
Okay, so I would have to agree that at this moment, the top issue stems from what's going on, what happened at the middle school, but I think that permeates throughout the district. And I think I won't repeat what other people said, but I think we have to work really hard to have the schools be a place where everything is addressed, but also where we can try to not have the isms be happening to everybody, and where people, students, teachers, staff, people feel safe and respected. I think that's a major problem. And I think in dealing with the middle school, I think it filters through all the schools because we're not silos. And how are we going to have curriculum that go through the whole school system and teach kids and help them learn and be empathic? And how are we going to provide the resources for the teachers and administrators to be able to do it? Because it's not easy. This is not an academic thing, but I would have to tell you that to me, one of the other big issues, maybe will come up later, is that we have probably a lot of important retirements coming up in the district. And I think that will potentially have a big impact on the direction that our district goes. And I think that that's something that we need to be really.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Back to the top. Oh, no, I'm messing things up. Mr. Kai MacMahon, you go right ahead.
Thank you. So I would echo what the other candidates have said. The recent situation at FMS is absolutely terrible and something that we need to address. My view is, I think that's a symptom. I think one of the, if we're looking forward, the question was what are the 2 most important priorities? My view is that stability at the top of the organization is absolutely critical. In the first few years that I lived here, we had a revolving door at the top, and I don't know how we can expect any organization to plan to work well on a long-term basis when the superintendent is leaving, when there's an interim, and we have that kind of instability. So I believe stability at the top is absolutely a number 1 priority, and if we get that right, it's a lot easier to then put the other pieces in place. Another thing that I think is worth calling out and referencing is the broad topic of DEI. I was stunned to learn that there's only 1 Black male teacher in the school system, which I find pretty extraordinary. And so that is it's obviously a very big topic, but representation and DEI generally, I would call out as a second critically important topic.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we're back to the top. with Theresa. What role do you think the school board plays in optimizing how technology is used in each of the schools?
Can you
Uh,
repeat that?
Sure thing. What role do you think the school board plays in optimizing how technology is used in each of the schools?
Well, as the school board does create policy, there would be policy created around how technology is used and around what technology is brought into the schools. Jeremy, or maybe it wasn't Jeremy, someone mentioned before, having state-of-the-art tech rooms for the children, and I really believe that as a board member, we will decide the next state of technology in our schools. And I believe very much in technology. We have a big artificial intelligence world ahead of us, and the board will have to decide where we stand in terms of moving forward with all the evolving tech for our children.
Okay, thank you very much. Jodie Meyer?
Sure, I think this is a great question because it kind of straddles several things, because I think, yes, I think the technology is and is going to be an issue that we're going to have to give continuing thought to, both concretely with the kids in the classrooms and also what we believe as a school district, what technology should be. But I think the question also touches on something else that I think is important, which is that it's really not a school board trustee's role or the school board's role to get in the weeds about things. I think it's our job to ask questions. It's our job to hear from the professionals that we hire who can come and talk to us about technology and what the needs are. We can ask questions, we can decide, and as Theresa referenced, we can create policies. But I think it's this very subtle play of whether we come up with ideas or where we get the ideas and the thoughts and the way that the district wants to go. And this is a place where I think we hire professionals and we have to hear from them and then do our best to come up with, to support them, but to also have policies that support the direction that we see the district, if it needs to go in a different direction, or change where we're going.
Okay, thank you. MacMahon.
Thank you. So there's two pieces to this, but from my point of view. The first is sort of academic, and then the second is administrative. The board obviously plays a huge role in the budget. You can't have a technology conversation without talking about budget. So when you look at it from that point of view, absolutely critical. It's such a huge topic that I think we could spend an hour and a half just talking about tech in schools, about things like ChatGPT and what's happening on the software side. We could talk about hardware and how much hardware costs and the need to refresh and spend money there. And so my view is that the budget side of things, the board obviously has to play a very active and a very strong role on. The academic side of things is not, my view would not be for me to come in as a board member and have a strong point of view on. There are experts within the school system who are hired to do just that. So two parts of that for me. I would say operationally, lots of input, academically less so.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy Galland.
So technology is a very interesting part of our education. I would pretty much just continue the conversation that Jodie started up there. I think if you ask a lot of the trustees, and if you ask a lot of the parents, there is a negative association right now with technology in a lot of our classrooms. And that's because we're thinking about it as how much technology do the students need? At the same time, if you ask adults, what percentage of your day are you writing on paper with your hand? It's going to be a really different idea. So there's this a little bit of a battle between what do young students need, what do older students need, and what do parents actually see as a useful skill. But in the end, technology is just not an area we really provide a lot of leadership on. It'll come up in board meetings because we do represent children, a lot of us, and it's more of a role for a PTSA committee or a HEF committee as they respond to different, grants. Our principals in the building are designing curriculum, our teachers are implementing curriculum, and our main school administration, as Kai says from the top, they are the ones who have to make these tough calls. In the end, it does come into budgets, and you can push back as you see that we're buying Chromebooks every 3 years. But technology is an administrative decision, unfortunately, because if it was up to parents, I think the kids wouldn't be coming to school with Chromebooks.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, here's our next question, and we're going to start with you, Jodie Meyer. What are the responsibilities of board members to make sure that each school receives the necessary funding and attention? Given that you all have students at different schools or who have graduated, how do you intend to gather the knowledge necessary to meet the needs of all students?
Well, obviously, that's what we're here for, right? We're here to meet the needs of students, and we're here to make sure that schools are a place that kids want to come and they're excited, teachers want to come and they want to engage, and everybody wants to be here, right? And engage with each other and feel like they're in an environment for learning. As a board member, in order to meet the needs of students, this is where we would have to rely on our administrators. When we're thinking about what we have to provide at each of the schools, we have to hear from the principals and assistant principals at each school and see what they're proposing and what they're requesting for the budget. I mean, it's not about our going around and polling people or talking to teachers or asking parents what they think. This is, again, a place where we rely on the professionals and on our superintendent and our director of curriculum to put together a package at each school that can effectively address the needs of students and use the resources we have and continue to get new resources and bring them in. But that's where we work in partnership with our administrators and with our superintendent.
Okay, thank you very much. Kai MacMahon?
Would you mind repeating the question, John?
Sure. One of the responsibilities of a board member is to make sure that each school receives the necessary funding and attention. Given that you all have students at different schools or who have graduated, how do you intend to gather the knowledge necessary to meet the needs of all students?
Great, thank you. So my view here is that listening is really the most important piece of this. I have so I've lived in the village for a few years. I operate in a number of different circles. I have a pickleball group, I have a skate group, I ride my bike around town. My wife runs a small business in town. We have a bunch of different sort of cohorts, if you like, and listening to what their priorities are, what the challenges are, has really become a part of daily life here. So I would say listening attentively to what the wider, broader community says, what challenges they are facing is core to that. And then as I go about my daily life, and then doing the same thing on the board, being open to different perspectives. There will doubtless be many situations that I am not personally familiar with that I'm asked to help navigate if I'm fortunate enough to join the board. And so active listening, going in with an open mind and with the mindset of learning about other folks' challenges and the obstacles in front of them is what I would prioritize there.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy Galland.
Thanks, John. It's pretty rare that question actually comes up for our Hastings schools. We have 3 schools. We have administrators who don't find it very difficult to share the resources equally. I think that's more of a statewide school board issue. John's coming out of New Rochelle. They have 5 or 6 elementary schools. I work in Yonkers where there's 7 or 8 different high schools. So you do have a lot of issues with sharing financial means, making sure you're making the long-term goals. But for our district, I think that question maybe would have been turned around a little bit. How do you make sure it's reaching all students? In that case, you know, our principal's job is to make sure they have a balance between our special ed curriculum and staffing and our enrichment staffing. Enrichment happens much more in the high school, so you have more classes. You have some classes with less than 20 kids in it. Special ed is very heavy down in Hillside. We have a lot of ICT classes. We try to put 2 teachers in every building. So while that would be a challenge for a lot of school districts, a very wealthy or a moderately wealthy school district like our own, we seem to be able to support all 3 schools quite fairly and equally. And I believe we're doing a great job between our alternative high school program that's graduated today, our special ed program that we continue to grow, and the huge amount of resources we spend in our high school and our clubs, our drama program and our music program. I think we're nailing that one pretty well.
Thank you very much. Theresa McCaffrey.
So as I understand the question, it is how can we as board members understand the needs of each school? And I do believe that what Jodie said is paramount. It's the administrators who will communicate to the school board the greatest needs in each school. And it is a continuous dialogue with the administrators and the superintendent when it comes to allocation of resources. I don't think it's a matter of sharing the resources equally. It's a matter of the resources being allocated to where there is the greatest need. And I see the role of a board member as a little bit more grassroots than maybe some others do. I do believe in talking to families and learning about what they think. I do believe that teachers have a huge investment in sharing what is their greatest need. And then we can come to the table to have talks with principals and the superintendent and be as versed as we possibly can as to what's going on in each school.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so here's our next question, and it's going to start with you, Kai McMahon.
Could I have a rebut to that?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Maybe using up my rebut, and I don't even know what a rebuttal is, just to add something, I guess, correct?
That's correct, sure.
I-
30 seconds.
Okay. I think for people who know me, I am certainly someone who believes in talking to people. But I also think, I'm going to give up my rebut, and it's okay.
Okay, you still got one more.
That, and I won't ask for one in its place.
Okay. Are you ready? Okay, so Kai McMahon, this question is for you. Number 6. In the future, the Board of Education may consider a proposed 10% school property tax reduction for volunteer firefighters and EMS personnel. What would your position be on that proposal?
I mean, this is an easy one from my point of view. Look, it would cost about $100,000 spread across the entire tax base to do this. It's really extraordinary to me that it's even a question. There's no doubt in my mind that I support it. It's an entirely unique situation. The village, the volunteer, the service that the volunteer fire department and EMS provide the village is absolutely extraordinary. And although we've got to be fiscally responsible, this for me is such a unique and such a standalone standout situation that it makes perfect sense to grant that, and I would absolutely support that without a shadow of a doubt.
Okay, Jeremy Galland.
Thank you. I've spoken about that at board meetings as we've had some of our volunteer firefighters come forward. I would have a different opinion than Kai on that one. I think it's quite clearly not a school board issue. That is our village that has to determine how they want to increase recruitment. So if I was put on the board, I'm going to be reaching out to our village trustees and asking them to come forward to the board. If they want to bring a need to the school because the governor has passed on the responsibility that she had available to her, and if the village needs help supporting the awesomest, most important volunteer organization we have in our town, then the school board's ready to work with this village trustees and finding a way for it to work. The law is changing. It used to be a 5-year commitment. Now it's down to 2. The Albany used to give a straight out tax credit for 1 year off your income tax. Now it's coming in as it's only going to go to people who own a home. It's not going to go to our volunteer firefighters. It's going to be a benefit that gives more to people who have more expensive homes. We don't understand, we don't regulate the recruitment needs. We don't have no oversight over the fabulous volunteers we have in our town. If the village wants to take the lead on that, the village has to come and propose something to the school board. Right now, it looks like it might be $100,000. Maybe it grows to $200,000. That's well within their budget that they can find a way so that school board taxes are related to that issue.
Lisa, you have the same question?
I'm going to say that I most definitely support a tax cut for our volunteer firefighters and EMS workers. And like Kai, I think that we have a fiscal responsibility in our village. We benefit from their work and we can absorb the $100,000 that it would cost us. It's unfortunate that this would fall on taxpayers in our community. In other states, there is state funding for just this exact thing, but we don't have it right now in New York State, and that's a whole nother cause. But they deserve even the small tax break. And at this point in time, the taxpayer should absorb this cost. And it is a school board issue because it will increase the taxes and all of it is interconnected.
Okay, thank you. Jodie, Meyer?
This is a great example of if the 4 of us were on the board, how we could talk about this really important issue. Because I certainly, when you spoke, Kai, I was completely shaking my head in agreement with you, and I am in agreement with you. And then when Jeremy spoke, I realized, things are always much more complicated. Like, in a way, it's a no-brainer that we would give a tax cut to the volunteer EMS and firefighters. If any of you have ever had a time when you needed them, there's no question that you would. But things are very multi-layered and complicated. And to me, I think where I end up is saying that, yes, I am totally in favor of there having some kind of a tax break. Do we need to be in conversation with the town, the village, and see how it plays out and who takes what role and what the state piece of this is? I think we would need to get a lot of information and then hopefully work to a place where the board would be able to support that. I remember many, many years ago, I can't remember what year it was, but I believe that we did the same thing for veterans where we gave a tax break. And, I think it's about what we value and how that plays out in terms of budgets and money. And I think this is something that we all value. Just how do we get there?
Thank you.
John, can I rebut quickly?
You have your rebuttal, 30 seconds.
So just a couple of things quickly. Number one, I don't think this is a complex issue at all. We're talking about a huge service that is provided to the school and to all the the residents of the village, by folks who volunteer a ton of time and who at 3 o'clock in the morning are in your house if the smoke alarm goes off without batting an eyelid. The reason it is a school issue is because the governor has given school boards the right to make this determination and to give this tax break. The village has done it, Greenberg has done it, the school board so far has not. And so my strong point of view is that we should be doing this. It's not an act of charity, it is a service to the school, just as a service to the village.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. I'm going to jump in for 30 seconds as well.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. So I think a lot of us have the same opinion that this is something our village can afford to do. We have about 3,000 tax-paying entities. If everybody's taxes went up by $100, that would be about $300,000 that could go towards supporting our volunteer firefighters. That sort of organization is a village responsibility. And that's why running that sort of program would always be under the village. They would be trying to figure out who qualifies, who doesn't qualify. Our school taxes can afford that, but it's got to come from the village trustees.
Thank you. Okay, very good. Okay, here's our next question, and it's going to start with you, Jeremy. The portrait of the Hastings learner has been adopted as a guideline for how the district aligns all work to support each child. What key attributes from this framework should the district prioritize?
Thank you. So the portrait of a Hastings learner was a really great opportunity to get an outside consultant and outside voice and opinion into our schools. The administration, Dr. McCaffrey, found somebody that they were excited to work with, a former superintendent, and having her viewpoint on our long-term goals is going to be key. I'm not really sure which one or which aspect is going to make the biggest headway here, but what is important is that in a setting where superintendents tend to stay for between 5 and 10 years, and as Kai said, that's the best scenario. We've had quite a few that only stayed for 1 or 2 years, some of them being interim superintendents, of course. So if superintendents have a 5 to 10 year perspective, the school board has to try to find a way to think longer term than that. Longer term is going to be our basic values that we can represent through budgets. But how do we make adjustments in an industry where there are such strong stakeholders that change is very slow, very incremental? It's not like any other industry until you've been in the schools and understand the so many limits between a teacher and a principal and administrator and what they can and can't do to motivate each other. It's really going to be helpful to have this overarching piece that our administrators and principals can use to guide some sort of middle term planning.
Thank you very much. Theresa McCaffrey?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. The portrait of the Hastings learner has been adopted as a guideline for how the district aligns all work to support each child. What key attributes from this framework should the district prioritize?
So through the whole process of coming up with a portrait of a Hastings learner, the district made a commitment. And it was a commitment to each and every student that each student would be enthusiastic about learning, would become a critical thinker, and would explore and experiment. And it's that I feel is we just have to focus on. How can we use curriculum? How can we use teacher passions to foster these values? They're incredibly important values, and they're not generic. And we really need to remember what these values are when we are choosing curriculum, boxed curriculum sets. Are they going to bring us closer to these goals and these values? And the portrait of a Hastings learner was a very important endeavor. and really needs to be at the forefront of all of our decisions.
Okay, thank you. Jodie?
So at the time that I left the board, which was in June of 2021, we were in the middle of COVID. That's also when Bill McCaffrey was first coming on as superintendent. It was one of the last things that I did on the board was be part of hiring him. And for many years, we would kind of struggle with our strategic plan. We would have a strategic plan, we would put it aside, we would bring it up, we would try to take care of it, we would make changes, and we never got anywhere. And when I learned about the Portrait of a Hastings Learner, I just thought that was such an incredible way to create a strategic plan that was child-centered, everything kind of about kids and through kids. And that's how we decide what our goals are, where we want to go as a district. And I have to say that I also think that it's so speaks to what's important that we do and how we think about every aspect of what we do, from curriculum to facilities to everything. And so when I was thinking about running for the board, actually one of the things that I was really thinking about that I would be excited to work on and be a part of was the Portrait of a Hastings Learner. I felt like it was new and exciting and just a wonderful window into how do we think about the district, where we want to go from children who are in kindergarten all the way through and even after they leave the schools. And I think we have to keep tweaking it, but it's a great framework.
Okay, thank you very much. Kai?
Thank you. So I'm just going to read a quote that really spoke to me, and this is my answer in terms of what struck me. So this is from the district site. The success of a great school district consistently over decades is based on the constant building of capacity, the accurate assessment of where we've been, where we are, and where we're going, the coherence with which goals are pursued and achieved. And so that for me sums up the effort, sums up the initiative, and in response to what do I believe is important about it, that's my answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going back to the top. And here's the question. It's going to start with you, Theresa. Please share your perspective on diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, and its relationship with students' mental health and academic success.
There's a direct relationship between children, students feeling safe, validated, and seen, and mental health. There's such a crisis in our high schools in our country right now when it comes to mental health. And there's a direct correlation between LGBTQIA+ students and their mental health in relationship to their school culture. And the same thing with Black and brown children feeling like they are a part of our community. There's a direct relationship between mental health and DEI issues. And it's of course, we're going to focus on the mental health for everyone and not just high schoolers, but it's really crucial that we do it for our students of color, of different gender orientations, and learning differences.
Okay, thank you. Jodie?
That's a hard one to follow, Theresa, because I think you really hit it out of the park. I have to agree with you. To me, there's no question that it's imperative that we pay attention to the issues related to DEI, but for everybody, and that we talk about it in terms of our curriculum, how we support students from a social emotional perspective, students' mental health, with DEI issues is complicated. Add years of COVID onto that for everybody, and we're in a terrible place. We're all the way through the schools. I tell you, as a psychologist, the people that I see, the kids, the adolescents, the families, and the way people have struggled. We have to have a school where people feel safe, where they feel included, where they feel seen and heard. And there's just no, and the board has to be upstanders for people, for having our district be a multicultural district that has curriculum that supports it, that is gender education that supports it, that we support kids who are LGBTQIA plus, and people of all religions, races, ethnicities. We have to find a way to weave it all together, or we all suffer.
Thank you very much. Kai?
Thanks. I would agree with everything that both Jodie and Theresa said, and I'd add, DEI is defined as the fair treatment and full participation of all people, particularly groups who have historically been underrepresented or subject to discrimination. How could anyone in good conscience be against that? So agree with everything that they said, and for me, DEI is not a sort of bullet item to look at alongside other priorities. It just has to be a part of how we run things. So absolute priority.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy?
So if any of us, we're all about the same age here, think back to when we were in school, what textbooks were assigned? Was it The Outsiders? Was it The Good Earth? Almost always it was the view of a boy or a man, a white man specifically. And that's sort of where I believe the need arose. Our schools don't look like that anymore. Our classrooms don't look like that. They're not posters of Newton, Einstein, and Galileo on the walls. So DEI is this continuing, growing idea that our students need and deserve and should learn from a diverse, multicultural curriculum. And that's been going on in schools for the last 20 years, and the momentum is building and building, and our teachers' lessons, our curriculum is only getting richer and more useful and helpful to our student population. It's not just on racial, it's not just on social emotional, it's on finding people that inspire our students. So in that sense, DEI is, of course, something that every education program is supporting. It's part of everybody's short-term and long-term plans. It's what makes our schools excel for all of our students. And we're finding more and more ways that it's helpful to incorporate those types of ideas and perspectives into our units, our curriculums, and our programs.
Thank
So
you.
I hope and know it will continue.
Thank you very much.
I think I
Okay.
want to use my other rebuttal.
Okay, go right ahead.
We were at the end of all four people, right?
Yes, we were.
Just wanted to say that I said a bit before that I worked for over 35 years at a school whose mission is to increase the number of underrepresented minorities in medicine. I was an administrator, I was a dean, I oversaw admissions, and I oversaw counseling. And I saw firsthand every day the way the DEI issues connect to mental health issues. And whether we're talking about people feeling seen and heard, people who are entitled versus people who feel not entitled, whether we're talking to imposter syndrome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. This question starts with you, Jodie. What do you think the board's response should be to bullying in the schools?
I think the board's response should be to listen and to really want to hear from people. The board's response should be to insist that we know that the schools, that the administrators have plans for how they're going to address this. The board's response should be to know that I believe that the schools should be dealing with the children who are doing the bullying, the kids who are being bullied, the families, the teachers. It should be everywhere. But the board has to, again, we have to listen and make sure that nothing is being swept under the rug and that we are finding ways to help kids and families. These issues are not new. I have to tell you, we have had these issues, but when they happen, it doesn't matter because they're so painful. And I think that we have to really make sure that at each of the schools, now we're focused on the middle school, that there's a plan in place for how things are going to be addressed, for what kinds of consequences there are, for how we're going to teach kids. Every time there's a bullying incident or any other isms, these are teachable moments, and we have to ensure that teachers and administrators can use those teachable moments, and we have to provide them with the resources also so that they feel able to do that. It's not easy to do. It's not easy to talk about this stuff, and they may need resources
Thank you.
to do it.
Thank you. Kai.
My view is that I think there is a need for greater transparency in the district. Exactly what form that takes, I don't yet know. But as an example, how many incidents are reported monthly or yearly? What is the process actually for reporting incidents? I took a look at Ardsley schools, Irvington schools, and then a couple of others, and they each seem to have pretty clear, defined reporting mechanisms on their sites. I don't find that on our digital properties. So broader transparency, I would say, is a pretty important piece. I think if we can use the higher profile middle school events that have just happened for good, as it were, I would urge transparency and greater dialogue. You know, reading about what happened in March in the middle school was awful to read, but equally dispiriting was, you know, I went to a couple of the board meetings afterwards, and families of color were basically shrugging and saying, not a surprise, this stuff happens, particularly happens in the middle school, but it happens across the board. And you know, my view is that that we should be working more closely with those families to work together to solve the issues. That's how I would summarize it.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy.
The driest and least helpful answer would be that the school board trustees do look at policy. We do look at policy about bullying and harassment. But in reality, what's the school board role is to express outrage, disgust, and support for the families and the community that's being affected. But on a smaller issue, I mean, you might want to try to consider this from the viewpoint of a principal. The principal might have 20 years of experience, the current principal in our high school. Our elementary school principal, she's been in this industry for 2 decades. They are not looking to the newest 7-person trustee for guidance on this issue. In fact, it's one that I think a lot of us have been touching upon. Know your role as a board member. Know where you're helpful, know where you're needed, and know where you're not needed. So bullying is a horrible situation. It needs to be addressed. But if you were in this industry, if you had a master's in this industry, you're not looking to the newest 3-year board member, which is what we usually get out of board members. You are using your own experiences, your own expertise, and you are addressing this head on. And it will change because it is the most important issue in providing a safe learning environment for all students.
Okay, thank you. Theresa?
You're muted.
Theresa, unmute yourself. Yeah,
Sorry.
there you go.
Of course, there are experienced professionals doing their job. Of course, there are principals with, 2 decades of experience who are handling situations, but it doesn't mean that we can't be sure and hold everyone accountable to acting in the most appropriate way for each situation. Yes, the role of the board is to express outrage and to express it, not just to be silent when it happens, but to make a public declaration that the board, finds whatever bullying incident has happened to be outrageous and disheartening and painful. But why can't the board meet with principals and go over the plan of action and be a part of it? I kind of resent, I guess, the last response that states that it's just not something that the board should handle, because we're active participants in the school community and have ideas and liaison with community members also.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so now we have another question, and it's going to start with you, Kai. As a board member, what assessments would you use? Let me start that over. As a board member, what assessments would you use to understand the district's support and services to students with disabilities? And how would you continue to optimize special education in the district?
Sorry, could you repeat that, John?
Sure. As a board member, what assessments would you use to understand the district's support and services to students with disabilities? And how would you continue to optimize special education in the district?
Thank you. So, I mean, the first system I would use is that I have a kid with an IEP, and so I have a personal connection and I'm hands-on. I have personal experience of special ed in the district, and so in terms of the sort of broader piece, 15% of our kids in the district have IEPs. 10 years ago, special ed in the district went through a pretty rough time. It was not in a good place. My view, we've been here for 7 years. We've had an extremely positive experience at Hillside. It's clear that a lot of great work has happened over the last 10 years, but that work needs to be ongoing and it needs to continue. We are either a school district that is here to educate all kids. My view is we have a moral responsibility to do that, or we're not. And so I'd summarize by saying, this is a pretty personal topic for me. I'm pretty hands-on, and the main system I would use is my daily life and my family, at least as a foundation, and then I would build from there.
Okay, thank you very much. Jeremy.
So what assessment was the, one of the first parts of that question? What assessment would you use to evaluate the success or the challenges or the needs of our special education program? And for that, there's a variety of, unfortunately, standardized tests that you can use to try to see what sort of growth we're having. But if it's a one-to-one, if it's a student of your families, you know that you don't need an assessment. So what's important, I think, for people to understand, and Theresa and I both have a master's in special education, and we've both taught in our classrooms working with students who are identified for special needs. The most important thing to realize about special education is that whenever a teacher is delivering supportive services, it is benefiting the whole class. So if you find a way to provide guided notes or a second way to look at a problem or in a situation, a way to read a textbook, everything that is done to support students with extra special needs only makes your whole classroom's learning environment more strong, more diverse. So we are evaluating our special education program. We are growing our special education program because there's up to 15% now need, but also because the benefits come out to all students. And hopefully we grow our program to the point where we have fewer and fewer families that are suing our district and saying that they are not getting the support they need.
Okay, thank you. Theresa?
So I would say that we would need to be privy to special education reports that compile the learning differences that we are seeing in our schools, and that also compile lists of what services the children in our district are qualifying for in order to move forward with providing these resources. So there has to be a district level special ed assessment report that informs our sort of understanding of the needs of our students. I don't believe, even though my son does have learning differences, I don't believe just by focusing on our personal story will I have the broad knowledge that is needed for me to district. And I also, so we need to know what we need to provide for each student, and that will be based on what is in their IEP. And we also need to know how many children are leaving our district because they are not being served, and what it is that would have served them, because that would also help us understand what we need to provide to our community.
Thank you very much. Jodie?
Yeah, so as Kai kind of referred to, many years ago, special ed was in a very different place. And we actually had a very thorough audit of special ed, and there were several, 6 or 8 recommendations that were made. And I believe that all of those recommendations were put into place. And I think that over time now we've begun to see sort of the progress and the benefits. But that said, you know, there are many kids in the district that are receiving services and it's going well. There are many families that aren't happy, or people who have to send their children out of district. I think what we need to do is we have to continually, and I believe that we do this to a certain extent, we have to be assessing where we are with our special ed program. We need to hear from the special ed department in great detail about what the needs are, what resources they need, how they're deploying the resources that they do have, what's working, what's not working. And we have to always be reflecting on, as a board, we have to reflect on our policies, our practices, even the physical spaces we have, so that we could always be improving the experience of children with disabilities. But I think that it's about getting the information so that we can make decisions about how we can best support the special ed department and the families whose kids are really entitled to being served in the best way possible and the most inclusive.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So we're coming up close to the end, and I can put one question in if you all limit your answers to 1 minute. Does that seem reasonable to everybody?
I think it's going to depend on the question, right?
The question.
Okay, so I'm going to just try it. Okay, let's try to do 1 minute. Timekeeper, are you with me on that? Okay, this will be the last question, and we're going to start with you, Jeremy. How do you think teachers' experiences can be valued and respected?
All right, well, I've been teaching in the classrooms for 10 years, and I'm not really going to let this candidate forum go without putting a couple other ideas out there. You know, I went to Hillside School, I went to FMS, I went to high school. My children have gone to Hillside, FMS, and high school. I teach in a middle school program right now in Yonkers. Teachers feel respected when they enjoy the work they do, when students come into the building and parents come and support them. And of course, they feel respected when their work environment is supported by contracts and administrators. So is Hastings doing that? You can tell if your child's coming home smiling and telling you about what they liked in the day. Unfortunately, they're more likely to do that if they're still in Hillside. That's when our kids come home and talk to us. If they're in middle school, you have a child in transition and it's tough to tell. But our teachers and our students are part of this community. Our residents are adults. Our school district bridges all of that. And it's working in
Thank
a
you.
lot of ways for our families.
Thank you very much. Teresa?
I think money shows value, and teachers received a 1.5% raise the last go around, and that was, you know, that's in comparison to a 4% increase for administrators, and that didn't really send the greatest message. So I think teachers need to be adequately compensated for and receive adequate raises, and that will show value and respect. And they also need to not be micromanaged and be given some freedom for self-expression through their teaching.
Okay, thank you very much. Jodie?
Well, I'll put the money part aside because we know how complicated that is. I will say that I think that schools are about kids and about teachers. You send your kids to school to be there with a teacher all day long. And if our teachers are not happy and not feeling supported, then I have to question what we're doing. And if teachers aren't feeling valued and supported, to me, that is kind of a symptom of something else. And yes, it might be about a contract that they're not happy with, but maybe there are other things. And I think we need to let teachers know, or the administration, we need to encourage the administration to try to dig deeper, to find out what's going on. The teachers don't feel valued and respected, because to me, what more do we want than our teachers to be engaged so that our kids can come to school and love being in school? And I think having autonomy is important, and having their voices heard so that they can feel respected and be valued. We have to make that happen again. That has to
Thank
be
you.
part of our schools.
Okay, Kai?
Thank you. So the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence in 2017 did a survey of teachers nationwide, and it found that the top 5 emotions teachers reported were being frustrated, overwhelmed, stressed, tired, and happy. And that combination of all of those things to me really struck me. I hear anecdotally that there are issues with teacher morale across the district. I have personally not heard directly from anybody, but I would like to better understand that. I will say that my son's experience through 3 years of Hillside has been absolutely spectacular. There hasn't been a single teacher's aide, anyone at Hillside that he hasn't absolutely loved. And so personally, I would like to better understand the sort of frustrated, overwhelmed, stressed pieces of that combination in order to really dig into that question.
Okay, thank you very much. So that ends all the questions, and now we have our closing statements. We're going to go in the same order as our opening statements. So that leaves, that starts with you, Theresa. So you have 1 minute for your close.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting together this panel, and PTSA for joining in the organization. And I want to thank all of you who are watching, who have stayed with us for an hour and a half. It was a very interesting and stimulating hour and a half. And I enjoyed hearing from all the candidates. As you've seen during this forum, I'm a passionate and knowledgeable educator. I think I would be a great asset to the board. My experience as a teacher and school director would serve me very well on the board. I am open-minded and flexible and really want to hear from the residents in Hastings.
Okay, thank you very much. If you're not speaking, mute your microphone, please. Okay, and now we have Jodie.
I also like to thank the Rivertown League of Women Voters and the PTSA, and to everyone who's joined in or who will watch this afterwards. I've lived here for over 30 years, and I've spent my life working as a psychologist with people of all ages, from preschool through late adulthood. As a previous member of the board, I served on many committees. I served as vice president. I did Reynolds Field, the school edition. I passed budgets and deadlines, and I really know the workings. I understand the complicated relationship between the administration and the faculty, the relationship of the board to the community, and the need for the board to juggle many different pieces as we go through our work. As a parent, I was involved in the district for many years in the PTSA. I served on the building leadership team at every school, on the safety council, on committees at the rec department. And for many people who know me, I proudly founded and have run the Hastings Rec basketball program for 21 years with my husband.
Thank you very much. Kai, you have a minute.
Thank you. So thank you again to the League for hosting the forum and my fellow candidates. Over the last hour and a half or so, we've barely started to scratch the surface of the many and varied important topics that will come before a board. I hope that I've given everybody watching a sense of how I'd approach my board duties if I was fortunate enough to be elected. Before we finish, I would like to take the opportunity to acknowledge that there are many taxpayers in our village who do not have kids in the school. For example, my friends who first introduced me to Hastings, who moved here 22 years ago, and whose kids have all graduated. One of them actually finished college today, so congrats, Bella. Or my 94-year-old next door neighbor and the couple that lives directly across the street from us. These people are all contributing to our school budget despite not having kids in the system, and for that I am both thankful and mindful. I'd like to wrap with a reminder to everybody that last year's budget vote failed by just 19 votes. Every single vote counts, and if you like the perspective I bring and you're aligned with the way I think, then please make a plan to vote, and I will see you on the 16th.
Thank you very much. Jeremy.
Thank you, John. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. It's an excellent forum. I'd like to leave with another impression. The strongest part of our Hastings schools right now are coming from the longevity of our teachers and our principals. The biggest challenge is to get a superintendent to give us the 5 and 10 year stay that our schools deserve. But the school board keeps turning over. It's very new. Right now, only Sylvia is going to be in her 2nd term. So Jodie and I would like to run back on the school board. And there's 4 of us who want to be on the school board. And you're going to obviously, 2 of us will get the biggest votes. My perspective as a teacher who understands unions, works with principals, understands public schools, I believe is crucial to continuing on the school board. But in general, our school board is turning over too frequently. There's too much of a learning curve. Our meetings are too long, and that discourages other people in our community from running. We have a lot of community members with administrative experience, and long meetings and inexperienced trustees can have a negative effect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, everybody, that wraps up the forum. So, thanks to the Rivertowns League, of course, for putting this together. Thanks for our ASL people that did all of the ASL work for us also. Of course, the League of Women Voters registers new voters to educate voters on issues, protects their right to vote. Your local league is made up of engaged volunteers, and anyone can join the league. It's not just for women. Listen, public service is not an easy task, so let's thank all the candidates for agreeing to serve your community. Okay, good night, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.